What's up, everybody? Welcome to In the Wings, a podcast talking about all things Beachmont players and potentially the greater Cincinnati community. We haven't decided yet, but we will get there eventually. I'm here with Kia, our director of marketing, our vice president of marketing. Gosh, I messed this up last time too.
No, you didn't mess it up last time, but you did mess it up this time.
What's your title?
You did correct yourself. Vice President of Marketing.
Vice President of Marketing. And if you didn't watch our last episode, this podcast is Kia's... Watch. Oh, I said watch again. Gosh, if you didn't listen to our last episode, this podcast is Kia's brainchild. So I think it would be great, Kia, if you could start us off. Can you give us some... goings on that we should be familiarizing ourselves with before we get into the episode?
Yeah, so later this episode, we're actually going to be chatting with the director of our upcoming production of Fun Home the Musical, Arlene. It's going to be a great interview. She's going to go into details on the show itself and kind of her vision for it. It's going to be really great, I think. But yeah, by the time this episode airs, we should be about to go into auditions for our show that's going to be next February, which is a play called Eleemosynary. It's by Lee Blessing.
Directed by Kate Brower-Bell.
Yes.
We're very excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I read the script for that last year, and it's a beautiful play. I think it's going to be a really special thing.
I think it was one that the entire play reading committee unanimously was like, I don't know how or when, but we have to do this script. We love this piece. And then Kate pitched it. Yeah, Kate pitched it to us, and we were like, yeah, this is our favorite. We love this.
Yeah. So if you haven't caught on, so we have Arlene and Kate. Our last show we did prior to Fun Home was Moonlight and Magnolias.
Directed by Laura Berkemeyer.
Laura. And then in the spring of 2025, we're going to be doing Working the Musical, directed by Maggie Ingram King. So, if you caught on, that is an all-female directing team, which is awesome. And it's actually the second time that has ever happened in Beachmont Players history.
Yeah, I was hoping you would give us that tidbit. Did you write down when the last time was?
I sure did. I had to scroll all the way back to 1969. That is when we presented a play called The Torchbearers by George Kelly. That was directed by Barbara Sutton. And then after that one, we did Don't Drink the Water by Woody Allen, directed by...
that one?
I know, it's such a good one. That was directed by Kathy Mullen. And then we wrapped that season with Goodbye Charlie by George Axelrod. And that was directed by Barbara Rex.
Hey,
so that's really, I think, really special and really, honestly, something to celebrate.
What's the quick math on this? That's like
a lot of years ago.
A lot of years ago. Both of us looked at each other like, oh, a lot of years. Many a years.
So
Dang.
Many.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that it happened again. And here's to hoping that it doesn't take 55 years for it to happen another time, because that's pretty freaking dope.
I know. I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah. Okay. So to set us up for our interview with Arlene that's coming, Kia, I have to ask you, have you heard of the Bechdel test?
I have heard of it, but if you asked me to tell you what it was, I probably could not.
Okay, so the Bechdel test, this is perfect, and you'll understand how this relates to Fun Home very shortly, I promise. So the Bechdel test is a literary kind of tool that's used. I don't know if tool is the right word, but we're going to go with it. Also known as the Bechdel-Wallace test, because it was kind of joint, but the credit's never shared. So I'm going to call it the Bechdel-Wallace test. So this test is basically to measure the representation of women in film and other fiction media, etc. So the test asks you a couple questions, or basically demands that the piece of media has two female characters, specifically named female characters, having a conversation for an extended period of time. It's kind of up in the air, but I think generally 30 seconds is kind of the gung-ho thing we're aiming for. So two named female characters having a conversation for 30 seconds or more about anything other than men.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's your sort of checklist created by the Bechdel-Wallace test. So, for example, in Into the Woods, you have a scene where Cinderella and the baker's wife are both having a conversation, but the conversation's about the prince. Doesn't count.
Yeah.
Also, baker's wife, not a named character.
Yeah.
So also does not count.
I feel like a lot of the characters in that show do not have names. Like Steward.
Which?
Yeah. I mean,
Cinderella's
prince.
father, dad,
Yeah.
Rapunzel's prince. You're right. Yeah.
Mysterious man.
You have the sisters do, Lucinda and
Florinda. I think, yeah.
Little Red, not a name.
No.
The wolf doesn't count.
Yeah, who actually does
Who
have
has
a
a
name?
name?
I think it's Florinda Lucinda.
The stepsisters.
Uh-huh.
Is there anybody else with a name in that show? Jack.
Oh, yeah.
Jack. And then Jack's mom also doesn't count.
Milky
White has a name. I love that. Okay. That's such
4.
That's the easiest one because it fails for so many reasons, but still a good show. That's not us knocking on Into the Woods. That's a classic. We love it. But does not pass the Bechdel-Wallace test. There's not a conversation in that show really where two female characters are talking about not men.
Okay, give me an example of something that does pass the Bechdel test then.
So that's tough. I mean, off the top of my head, the first thing that came to my mind, I don't know why, is Orange is the New Black. I guarantee you that has many scenes in it that would pass. Theater-wise, that's an interesting question.
Eleemosynary might, actually.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
That play absolutely does. Fun Home absolutely does too. You have Joan and Medium Allison. Again, we're going to get to Arlene's interview very soon, so I don't want to spoil too much. But it's promising and very good that Fun Home would pass the Bechdel-Wallace test because Fun Home is the memoir about Alison Bechdel herself.
Aww.
And we're going to get into that right now.
Welcome back to In the Wings, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of everything Beachmont Players. Tonight, whatever.
Whenever you're watching this.
Whenever you're
listening to this. Wow, we're new to this. Can you tell?
Oh, man. It's been a day, hasn't it? Today, Mike and I are joined by Arlene Balzo, the director of Beachmont Players' upcoming production of Fun Home, which is a musical based on Alison Bechdel's graphic memoir. So welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So Arlene, tell us a little bit about the show and kind of what drew you to direct this specific piece for Beachmont.
Well, when I think about the show, I think it's real. This is a real show about a real family, a real woman's perspective about what happened to her and the other members of her family, predominantly based on choices her father made. And so she is seen on stage throughout almost the entire show because we're watching her memories relive themselves through a young version of her, a college-age version of her, and then occasionally we're going real time. So we see what she's thinking right now about what she went through and what her siblings went through, based again on choices that her father made. So that's pretty much what it is without giving away too much. It is a musical. It's called a musical or tragic comedy. So it does have a really good ebb and flow of sad, tragic moments, but also how they dealt with them through comedy, which a lot of people will do. When they're going through some challenging times or painful times, they'll resort to comedy so that they don't just wallow in that part of their life. And so there are moments where you will laugh. There are moments where you might get a little choked up. There are many moments where you're really just listening, because I think for most people this will be a news story. Yeah. And so they're going to listen to the story. They're going to feel while they're listening to the story, and hopefully they'll walk out with maybe even some new perspective on things.
Yeah. So my favorite part about that is we did some like workshops with a recovery center. So it was like you'd write plays based off of experiences people in the recovery center were going through, and then they would give you feedback. And they always said, they're like, the thing that this is missing is you're either taking it too serious, and it's like, yes, our stories are difficult and we went through things that are hard, but that doesn't mean, like, we joke about it. That's how we get through it. That's literally how you get through the hard times in life. So I love the tragic comedy thing. That's so good.
For sure. And so you say you have 3 different generations of Allisons.
Mm-hmm.
Do you give like key characteristics to each one to kind of distinguish themselves and like watch as they get older, like the progression or anything like that?
Well, first, I'm not even sure I named her, so I'm glad you brought that up. So the main character is Allison.
Yeah.
She's not really a narrator. She's more like we're seeing how her brain is reflecting on what happened and trying to make sense out of it. And then we're seeing it come to life with her 10-year-old version and then her 18-year-old version. As far as characteristics go, I'm kind of hoping that all 3 Allisons are similar because they are the same person,
Sure.
Just we see growth. Like the young Allison, it's hard to explain it without giving away too much
I
away,
know.
but we have a lot of innocence
Yeah.
and hope in the young Allison. But then you get to the college age Allison, and that's where she's really trying to find herself and be true to herself and is questioning some things about both her parents. And then with the adult Allison, I think she just needs some closure to how she views what happened and why things happened the way they did.
That's the like coolest part about theater too, is you get to see her adult self watch it. You see them both on stage together, and it's like, at least for me as an audience member, it's like, oh, what would I say to my younger self right now? You know, like, or like, yeah, if you could give yourself advice, what would you say? You know, so it's kind of that like adds to the heartbreaking thing, I think, seeing them both on stage and watching yourself deal with, I don't know.
Well,
You know
I think
what
a lot of people will think, if I could just turn back time,
Oh,
can I have
yeah.
a do-over on
Yes.
that? And so you see her a lot of times wanting to just change the
Sure.
past, but she knows she can't change the past, but she so wants to change the
Yeah.
past so that the trajectory changes and the
Yeah.
outcome changes.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I'm like, I feel like every day I'm just like, oh, why did I say that in 3rd grade? Like, please, can I go back and just not say that?
We
Like,
will surely feel some of that when listening back to this episode.
Oh,
We're
I'm
gonna be like,
sure.
why did I say that?
Why did I say that way? Yeah. All right. So Mike actually happens to be in the show. So I'm curious, Mike, how has it been being in the show and kind of bringing it to life?
Yeah, I mean, so backstory, I did my in undergrad, what was it called? Like senior project on Fun Home. That was like one of our books. I was
nice.
taking a women's writers class, and that was like my final project. So I've always really loved this story, and like I also just, I mean, immediately this is very surface level, but I feel very compelled by a graphic novel for adults. I just think that's always going to be fun and cool. And what better way to pull from like theatricality than, you know, a graphic novel. So the source material was very exciting for me. So that's part of the reason I was so excited about this project, is just the source material, and I think the richness in that. For me personally, I play 4 different characters in the show, which I think is always a lot of fun, right? Like between physicality and voice and just how they carry themselves and take up space, how do you like differentiate those people? And I do think like, you know, the story's so like expressionistic, so you have like Allison, and this is all like how she remembers it or how she views it. So that's also like an interesting layer, right? Like, is everything you're seeing on stage is kind of I think we can connect back to her mentality and her mindset and her vision of things. So then it's not just how do I approach this character, it's also like how does she remember this character, right? Or whatever, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. Did I do it justice, Arlene?
Yes.
Is that fair?
You know, it's interesting because, yeah, you're phenomenal at making every character its own character. And hopefully the audience won't even think, oh, that's the same actor that I saw. That's our hope. It doesn't matter if they do.
Yeah.
But that would be neat. And if an actor or a person who has never acted, has never done that before, I've only done it once, it's challenging.
It is.
To be a complete, like your whole body language, everything has to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like whenever, well, I try. I can't say I do this every time I play a role, but my goal is to like make sure my family and friends don't come and say, "Oh, that's Kia on stage." I want them to be like, "Oh, no, that's Suzanne on stage."
Sure.
You know, it's fully embodied, like I'm not myself. I don't know.
There was Philip Seymour Hoffman before he passed, if you know that actor. He did this interview where he specifically was talking about, like, you know, the celebrities that are in tabloids and stuff, and he's like, I want my real life persona as far away from the media as possible, because he always felt like if people knew anything about him in real life, then they would have a harder time believing his characters, right? And I mean, I love Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think he's incredible. So like, and I think it's a good testament to that, right? Is like differentiating yourself from the characters as best you can, as far as you can. Yeah.
So true. That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I'll see somebody on stage and I'll think, wow, that person was so good, but I've never seen them before.
Yeah.
Would they be different if I saw them in a different role, or is that just them on stage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a very weird concept, right? Because you're like, oh, if your character's so different than your personality, but that's not the compliment we want, because that makes me feel like you were just thinking about me as a person versus my character. Like, I don't want you to comment on how different I am from my character. I want you to just comment on the character, because that's all I was being in the moment, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier in the episode, our current season at Beachmont is the second time that Beachmont Players has ever had an all-female directed season, which is really, really cool. So I'm curious, Arlene, has being part of an all-female directing lineup kind of influenced your approach to Fun Home, and do you feel a particular connection to the story from like that perspective?
I don't think it's influenced my approach on how I'm directing the show. I already have been dreaming of directing the show and knowing and having a vision of where I wanted to go with it. However, with you asking that question, I did instantly in my brain go to, I wonder if these same shows were directed by males, if they would look different.
Yeah.
Because of their perspective, a male's perspective on how to put on the show. Is that nurturer in me coming out? And so I'm really sensitive to how a mother feels about her kids, you know? And am I going for that? Probably a little, because I want people to look at this show. This is not a spoiler, but I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to put on this show because the female lead is a lesbian. And I don't want people to watch the show and just keep thinking this is about a lesbian.
Sure.
I want them to think about this is a girl, a woman who's been affected by society and her family, and how she's dealing with it, because we all have to deal with things. And sometimes it could be being true to ourselves. And so I'm hoping that what I'm showing is real people with real feelings, with real things that have happened to them, and how it's affected them, and how they're dealing with it.
And that, like, the piece of connection between Allison and her dad, that's like, sure, like through the show it's like LGBTQ centric, but I mean everybody can relate to like disagreeing with your dad or like struggling to connect with your parents, right? Like that is such a broader concept that hopefully everybody can see no matter what, you know.
Right. We all want our parents to love us and be proud of us.
Yeah.
And when that doesn't always happen, if we're not always feeling supported or loved, although there is support and love in this family too. It's a very rounded family, like everybody's family.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be, good moments and tough moments. I feel though that as an audience member, if I was sitting out there watching it, I just want to go through the feelings with the show.
Yeah.
And not think about labels.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And to your Kia, you had mentioned about the female season and stuff, and Arlene, you said like if men was directing this or whatever. I think Helen's character in the show could be easily overlooked if you're like not approaching it with that sort of like engagement. Like you were just saying, like your connection as like a mother and everything, like that. The Helen character is very compelling. I mean, again, trying not to give spoilers, but like her role in the show I think is hugely important. And like complacency and how you show love for your partner when they're not, when you maybe disagree or things are going wrong, and that's something I do think you could overlook if you're directing it from one angle versus another, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because as soon as you started saying that, I was thinking about how I'm working as the scene with Helen and college-age Allison and the emoting of feelings that I want to have happen there, even if it's non-verbally and it's not written in the script. I'm like, that's her baby.
Yeah.
That's the mother's baby. And so I want the audience to feel their connection too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Mike, what do you think audiences will be most surprised by when they come to see the show?
Okay, so it depends on how familiar people are with the source material, right? I would be really mad at myself if I didn't take this opportunity to shout out the awesome like 3 kids that are in the show, because again, when you hear tragic comedy or just like sort of some of the adult themes in the show, like one, I think it's surprising to see these 3 kids just having so much fun on stage, and then 2, I think it's like, did you say unexpected or what was the word you said?
Most surprised.
Most surprised by like. I mean, I'm constantly surprised at how good they are. Like not be like just in general, like they are so grounded and professional in a way too, like and so talented beyond their like the scope that you would expect, right? Like I would love to hear you talk about this, Arlene, because it's like, you expect just innately when you're working with kids, there's going to be a little bit of hand holding I'm going to have to do. I'm going to work a little bit harder with them. You just sort of that thing. I don't know, like, have you been surprised by like what they've been able to do?
Yes, very much so. Like one of our, I don't want to name people, but one of our actors, I wasn't quite sure if they would be able to carry vocally their part, and oh my gosh, they're carrying it vocally. All 3 of them are carrying it vocally. I'll give our lead, our small Allison, little Giselle, I'll give her a director's note.
Sure.
And she takes it and runs with it, like way better than I ever thought she could. And
better
she's
than
only
some adults do sometimes.
Yes. Agree. Yes. Agree. These kids are 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, wild.
And they are immensely talented, and they also know how to take direction.
Yeah.
And they work so hard. They've learned 2 big choreographed dance numbers, and they've kept up with the adults really well.
Yeah.
Maybe even had more energy. And let's do it again when they're all like, can we take 5?
Yeah. Yeah. So that I have to go there when you say like, what are people going to be surprised by? Because I just think the kids are awesome. I mean, it's the whole cast is incredibly spectacular. It's like pretty mind blowing to be a part of that. But the kids just have that special place because it's like, you underestimate them just because they're young, and you think, theater's a lot of work, like that's a lot, but nah, man, they're pros. They are pros.
Yeah.
I'm also really excited to see the set design. I think you have a great set design, and I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, Dan Dermody did a wonderful job designing the set, and then Don Phillips and his crew. I mean, the whole set's built already.
Yeah, it's insane.
Audrey Gorman and Jen Mahue and the other people that are helping to paint it are diligently working on getting the set painted. So, we have the challenge with Beachmont players of not being able to put the set up till the Sunday before we open, but I think it'll be like up and ready to go without any additional touches having to put to it.
Yeah, and just having it done like a month. Yes. We're a month before the show, right? Like that's pretty. I would say that's pretty insane.
That's
awesome.
impressive. Like,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
this crew is great from top to bottom. It's a really good crew and a lot of creative geniuses.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I feel that audiences will be surprised about is how much they'll be able to relate to individual characters and then the family unit as itself.
Yeah.
I do. I think some people might be a little hesitant about, well, I'm not going to feel connected to this story at all because I'm part of the heterosexual somebody say it for me.
Heterosexual, yes.
Yes, community, thank you. That's why I'm directing and not in it. And then all of a sudden they'll realize heterosexual, bisexual, asexual, it doesn't matter where you fit in and what community you fit in. We're all humans and we all have the same human emotions. And so I feel that people in the audience will all find things that they will relate to and connect with.
I think that's something like in the theater world that sometimes gets overlooked. Like, you know, you're designing a season and you look at a show and you're like, oh, well, that's for a community that we don't necessarily have. Or like, that's a community that like, or that story's for such a specific community that it's not going to relate. But I'm like, it's actually like, the cool part is through those stories, we like reflect back on ourselves, whether we're part of these specific communities or not. Like that all connects back to who all of us are as people. Mm-hmm. So it's always important, even if you're like, well, that may not directly be your community or like something you're like fully immersed in, but that doesn't mean that the story is not going to contain tons of valuable conversation and weight that applies to everybody. Yeah.
And maybe it'll change some people's point of view on things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is always the dream.
Okay, so as a director, me and Kia have both directed shows. Arlene's got the experience out the wazoo over us, but
because I'm old
and very talented.
Yes.
So I have to throw this question out because I think most directors would appreciate this question. There's always a point, I think, in a rehearsal process where, like, you know, there's the stress at the beginning of, like, I got to get all my ducks in a row. There's the stress at the end of, like, we got to see all these things through. But somewhere in the middle, you're, like, in the middle of a rehearsal process, and you just, like, it's like that out-of-body experience of, like, oh, my God, we're doing this story, and this is awesome. And, like, there's something empowering or, like, emotional, like, that sort of reaction just from, you know, seemingly maybe something small or whatever in rehearsal. Do you have a moment like that you want to share with us?
Yes, probably a lot of moments. After rehearsals, you know, just even yesterday learning the dance to Raincoat of Love, I went home on such a high. And I know there was a few times while everybody was doing the choreography that I was just screaming because I was so excited about how amazing everybody looked. But one particular moment that I remember was a week ago, and our fabulous vocal director, Amy Prestridge, was working with the three young ladies who are playing the three Allisons. And they were doing a song that the three of them sing together in the most beautiful harmony. Yeah. And I'm videotaping it for them so they can watch it and practice it later. And I'm literally ready to cry. Like, and I know I can see Rachel's looking at me like she's going to cry. And I'm thinking I'm not going to cry because then I hear that. I'm going to hear the sobbing on the video. So I'm trying really hard to disconnect. But as soon as I finished videotaping it, I said to them, aren't you just so excited that you get to play this role of Alison Bechdel in this show? And they were all like, yeah. And especially the little 10-year-old, she's like, yeah, this is my favorite song, you know? And I said, this is going to be incredible. Yeah. This show is going to be incredible. Yeah. And I just hope that every single seat, every single night is covered with somebody's rear end. I just think everybody needs to come see this show or they're going to miss out on something really precious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That just reminded me a little bit of like when people post videos at concerts and you can just hear their like off-tune singing in the background as they're recording, and it just
but they're so into it.
It is. It's very endearing and I love it. But yeah. All right, so before we wrap up, we wanted to do something a little silly. So you might be wondering why I asked you what your favorite Disney movie was earlier. It happens to be Mary Poppins. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to take the cast and characters of Mary Poppins and cast Fun Home with them. So this is obviously all hypothetical because Mary Poppins doesn't,
distinction or clarification is Arlene casting the performers of the Mary Poppins movie, like Julie
Sorry.
Andrews, or Mary Poppins, the character
Yes,
herself?
the characters themselves.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
So like Bert and Mary Poppins, like who would they?
Play in Fun Home?
Yes.
Oh. Well, that works out kind of well. Because, yeah, of course, Mary Poppins could easily be Helen.
Mm-hmm.
And now Bert's going to be married to her
Yep.
and be Bruce. And then we've got 3 kids, and in Mary Poppins you have 2.
They'll
So
have to split. They'll
we'll
have to
double
split.
cast
Yeah.
Michael and Jane.
There we go.
And the kids' roles.
You have the 2
Got that crazy.
the house workers, right? The maids.
We have
yeah.
that one mean one that came after Mary Poppins left for a while.
Oh, yep.
You have that mean one. I might make her play the 4 different roles
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, see,
because she's a character actor,
yeah.
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
So she could play the 4 different roles.
I was wondering if we were going to just get a penguin to be Mike's characters. Because that'd be funny.
Oh, you're using animated characters too in that movie.
Yes. I mean, they're in the movie, so.
Like all the what was it, like a Ferris wheel, merry-go-round.
Yeah.
All those things that come to life.
I know there's not that many. I remember there was like Uncle, that
Sure,
loving,
yep.
right? Wasn't he an uncle or something?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
I can't remember.
The one who comes in at the beginning and is like, "Hey, you have money problems?" I don't know if I'm remembering this movie correctly.
Yeah, it's been years since I've seen it.
I know
but-
you have all the bankers.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the kids are like, "I want to deposit my money," and then instead they feed the geese, and all the bankers get mad. Isn't that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
That is a
okay,
thing.
okay, yeah.
Only thing is, there really isn't another really good female role to be Allison.
Sure.
Because, I mean, Julie Andrews
I know.
Right.
was made, as Mary Poppins. Who are you going to put against her except for...
You could.
Or could we put Mary Poppins as Allison and then Mrs. Banks as Bechtel or Helen Bechtel?
Bechtel.
Oh, yeah. Because you have Mr. and Mrs. Banks.
Yeah, so then
We
he
do
could
have
be
Mr. and Mrs.
he could be
Banks.
Bruce.
Mr. and Mrs. Bechtel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they could be Bruce and
Julie Andrews
Helen.
was probably around the right age for Allison.
Yeah, for sure. There's Miss Andrews too, which is funny because the actress who's playing our Helen was my Miss Andrews. I
Really?
believe that was her role
Oh,
in
that's
my Mary
so
Poppins.
funny.
Now, of course, if she listens to this and I got the wrong role for her. Oh, but then I remember I had this actress, Andrea Squires, and I cast her. She was in the ensemble, but I cast her in this one role where you had to bark like a dog.
Oh my
She
goodness.
can nail the dog bark. So, yeah, she could be medium Allison. I don't know why, but maybe she could do Joan too. I don't know.
Oh, man.
I think back to my cast of Mary Poppins because I got to direct that on stage at the
Okay.
Aronoff. And there was a lot of really talented people even in the ensemble. So
Yeah.
we could grab ensemble members
Absolutely.
to cover the other roles
absolutely.
too because they were all talented.
Absolutely. I love that. I love
Yeah.
this game.
I do too.
That's
It's
so
so,
That's a hard
fun.
game though if you don't have equal.
Yes.
Right.
roles,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have to basically pull from the
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
the other bit parts in the
Right.
movie.
But of course, I am thinking of the stage version because that's what I did more recently than
sure.
watching the movie.
I guess you could cheat and include the new Mary Poppins movie. So you have Emily Blunt and Lin-Manuel
Oh, I
Miranda
haven't
to choose
seen
from.
that one yet.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
haven't either.
I watched bits and pieces. I did not finish it.
Hmm.
But then you have more people to choose from.
True.
Yeah.
But to be continued, I suppose.
Yes. All right. So I just have one more question for both of you. What is one reason people should come see Fun Home at Beachmont Players?
The kids. just kidding.
No, they're great.
I mean, well, yeah,
They are.
not kidding. I mean, it's true. But I already said that answer.
Yes. You do.
I mean, I feel like we've covered, the story's good, the performers are awesome, the kids are incredible, Arlene's direction has been awesome, the set's cool, literally it's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah, it's 90 minutes, no intermission,
Ooh,
so
good
it's
one,
a good, little sit for the night. You can go out and have drinks or dinner after the
Yeah.
show, or if you come to a matinee, then go to dinner after the show. But I think they need to see these 9 performers, the 9 actors that I put into this role. Well, it wasn't just me. It was Amy and myself that cast the show. I think we nailed it, and we had a lot of talented people to choose from. But I think we really chose the right people to embody these particular people, and they can sing, they can dance, they can act. I think they're going to fill people's hearts.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here. Come see Fun Home.
You want to get dates?
Yes, it opens November 8th and runs through the 16th at Anderson Center Theater, and you can get tickets at beachmontplayers.org. So thank you so much for joining us today,
thank
Arlene.
you guys. This was fun.
Yay!
My first podcast.
Yay! Wow, that's an exclusive for us.
That is.
We got Arlene before anybody else did.
This has been another episode of In the Wings, a podcast production telling you about all things Beachmont Players. If you'd like to get involved with us or see what else we've got going on, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can do so via our website, beachmontplayers.org. Link in the description. Until next time.